Upshare in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, Sinawo Tambo had a dope conversation with Penwell Ipene Elimnyama there in the Convo show, Penwell's podcast, and they talked about many things that I would love us to cover now. I might be a little bit late because the conversation was held about a month ago, but it's still very important for us to touch on this because EFF leaders don't normally go to other podcasts, a lot. So when they do, for me, I think it's a highlighting point because the EFF has got a very good podcast that they are already running for themselves there in their headquarters. So when EFF leaders go outside their own podcast and go to other podcasts, I think it is a matter of conversation that we must have with them. Let's talk about that and much more.
Welcome to King Said So, Africa's one land, one language, one currency, one army on King Said So. Africans can unite. Your Pan-Africanist podcast. Enjoy.
Peace in Pan-Africanism to all my African brothers and sisters from all around the world. Welcome back to King Said So. I'm your host, Kagiso Hlongwane Zinjiva Sono, and we're back at it again with another one. Lalelana here. Today we are talking about Sinawo Tambo from the Western Cape, a young man who is a member of parliament from the Economic Freedom Fighters, the party for the people. I want us to discuss this conversation that he had with Penwell because really I love Sinawo's energy. He's got this confusing frequency about him. He's always chilled. Even when he gets emotional, it's always controlled with him. He's one of those fighters that you can trust to send anywhere, to carry any type of conversation, to answer any type of question, because he's very well learned. He understands politics. He's not moved easily by criticism and all of those things of the economic freedom fighters, and he's well spoken as well. So I want us to cover this conversation with him and Penwell. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys know that we are having the gala dinner on the 2nd of May. Please don't be tired of me announcing the gala dinner. We are building an African school, a Pan-African School of Economics, Technology and Agriculture. I cannot get tired to be telling you guys that we are building this school because the Dutch has for 300 years built a system that worked against us as African people. How many more years do we need to do to decolonize the mindset of an African child? We are starting with the next generation by building schools that our children can trust to get true information about the African history, true studies about science, technology, and agriculture, so that the day when our children have to take Isolabo back, they would know what to do with the land, with the minerals, and know what to do with the economy. That is very important. That is why we are building this school. That is why we are having this fundraiser event on the 2nd of May. It is for the next generation. It's not for me and you. We must plant the seed. We must build the school so that when our children ask us, what did we do? What did you do as our parents? What did you do as our ancestors in your time when you were still young, when you were still able, when you were still alive? We must be able to answer and say, we built Baseta for you guys. So thank you for everyone that has purchased a ticket for the gala dinner and everyone that is still going to purchase a ticket. We need the money. There's still a lot of things to pay off in the next month. So I'll be making a lot of noise this coming month about this gala dinner. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Sinawo Tambo speaking with our brother Penwell, Ipene Mnyama, and I want us to listen to what he said about them taking money from Rupert and all of those things. Will the EFF accept any money from Rupert? And that's a very interesting question from the Oppenheimers as well. People who don't necessarily support the vision of the EFF, but then they come with a lot of money. And that's also something that we have faced as Paseta, where people who we know that in the future will come with their controlling tendencies, their conditions when it comes to funding. You won't believe the type of offers that we have had. We got outside our race who want to build this school for us. Cash And we said no. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's quickly listen to what Sinawo Tambo feels about Rupert. Penwell is obviously going to ask that question. Penwell stands when it comes to this type of things. But this is what Sinawo Tambo said.
But you guys would accept money from anyone who believes in your cause?
Not anyone. It depends who. I don't expect Rupert to believe in our cause. And I don't expect us to
But you'd take his money?
No, we wouldn't.
Why not?
Rupert gives money with conditionalities. And individuals like Rupert, when they give you money, they place certain conditionalities on what you must do once they've given you money. I think the Democratic Alliance is trapped in a very nefarious relationship with capital and the people who have funded them. Because within them now, if you look at this GNU, the ANC is passing legislation that the DA thought it would stop when it was in the cabinet and within ministries. And there's a big push internally that let's pull out of this thing because it's going to politically compromise us going into elections in 2026. Their core constituency is against the Bella Act, is against the NHI, is against the Expropriation Act.
Yes.
And they can't pull out because capital is invested in Cyril Ramaphosa as a president of South Africa. And if the DA pulls out of that national government of national unity, it poses a huge risk to Cyril Ramaphosa. But secondly to that, it poses a huge risk that the EFF will enter. So they are just told to accept whatever legislative steps that are being taken by the ANC that are opposed to their core values because capital has a vested interest in stopping the EFF from entering, but also in retaining Ramaphosa there as a president. So I think we can't take money from people like your Johan Ruperts and individuals of your Nicky Oppenheimers, because their money comes with compromising conditionalities. And anyone who supports the DA and wonders why they're not getting out of the GNU, you must know that they ate wrong money. And it's placed them in a very difficult situation where they have to stick it out, whether they politically believe in it or not.
If Rupert doesn't give conditions, you take the money.
Let me not answer that. I don't think we take his money either way, man. He's an individual who's diametrically opposed to what the EFF stands for.
Sure.
I don't foresee that ever being possible. Like, he wouldn't do it.
Maybe he'll donate like Mutsip and say in the spirit of democracy.
No, he doesn't believe in us. He hates us. Johan Rupert despises the EFF. And I think the feeling is mutual.
Ladies and gentlemen, Black political parties will always find themselves in difficult situations. Black organization also, like I said, even with the Pan-African School of Economics, Technology and Agriculture, we find it very difficult raising funds because it takes so much convincing for African people who call themselves Pan-Africanists to dig in their pockets. We saw that how people are suffering there in Azapo, one of the oldest parties here in South Africa. We also saw that with the PAC, how they are suffering campaigning because white monopoly capitalists does not fund them. So this issue of would you take money from the likes of the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts, it's a very difficult position to find yourself as a president of a political party where you want to do well, but you find yourself being limited because of resources. And Penwell will even ask if Rupert does not give you any condition, does not place any condition, would you take that money? Because there is white black people who think they can outsmart the master. You can't. You can't take the master's money and think you will outsmart them. And Penwell does not understand that. We're not going to speak about him in this podcast out of respect, but you guys know his positions on those type of things. So I'm very happy that the EFF is saying that they are not going to take money. It's another issue to debate when we look at who has funded the EFF, but even in the 2024 elections, it's very difficult without money. And this is what Sinawo Tambo said about that.
Look, I'll start with your first one. The national elections of 2024 were difficult, I think, for everyone.
Okay.
Except perhaps the MKPB, which was an emerging organization at the time.
Sure.
They were difficult for the EFF because there was, in our belief, a concerted effort to exclude us from government by vested interests of
the Moonshot Pact.
Yeah.
For example, that said
Pact.
the EFF is enemy number one.
Yes.
Not even the ANC.
Yeah. So we're not the ruling party. We're the third largest party in South Africa, but the declaration was that we are the biggest threat to South African democracy, whereas the ANC has been in government for 30 years and failed. And that didn't come from anywhere. That coalition of the moonshot packs led by the Democratic Alliance was a concerted effort by domestic and international capital, in our view, to suppress what we stand for. So we're a socialist organization. We believe in building state capacity. We're an organization that believes in guiding capital. So everything in the private sector must be guided by strict regulation by the state. The state must be involved in construction, must be involved in mining, must be involved in banking. So what we represent is a threat to the profit maximization interests of the private sector. And as a result, the elections of 2024 had a lot of money in them, going to a lot of political parties, not only funding them, but creating them. There was an organization called Change SA here. Roger Jardine, formed by an individual called Roger Jardine. It got 35 million to contest elections. Never contested elections, withdrew on the last minute. We don't know what he did with that 35 million. That's a form of money laundering in our understanding. Possibly was distributed to other political parties. The DA got more than 70 billion, I think, in donations. Action,
70 billion?
Not billion. I'm getting the figure
70
wrong.
million.
70 million.
Okay.
Action SA got millions. And if you look at the common denominator in terms of funding, you find the Oppenheimers, you find it's Robert Marshall, I think is his name. You find these individuals who are funding
Martin Marshall.
Martin Marshall, not Robert Marshall. You find the same individuals funding the same political parties who have the same ideological positioning. And the EFF is not getting funding from any of these people, not that we want it or we need it. But you can see that there's a formation of political parties, a creation of political parties, and a funding of political parties to ensure the exclusion of the EFF from governance. And they weren't scared to declare that. So those are the conditions under which we were contesting those elections. It's not an excuse. We make reflections on our own internal incapacities as well in terms of organizational structures, not being present in every ward as we needed to be. But there was a concerted effort to ensure that the EFF failed.
Yes, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2024 elections was a difficult one for the EFF when we talk about funding and everything. Although for me, it did not look like it. It looks like Umphile Mautwe, the Treasurer General, did a fantastic job in spreading the money quite well into their campaign. It did not look like they were struggling financially. And of course, they were struggling financially because they did not get the millions from the Oppenheimer family and everything. So yeah, it was difficult. Also, the propaganda of trying to make EFF the number one enemy, it kind of assisted the MK to sneak in there because people were looking at the EFF as the main problem and never foreseen the force that the MK was coming with, So one thing that breaks my heart with the EFF is that I've never heard the EFF complain about the results properly. They were one of the first parties. I remember that press conference that Malema came out. It looks like he was getting flu or something like that day and accepted the results. And when he accepted the results, my heart was broken. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm voting, because I felt like the EFF was cheated more than any other political party. I know the MK complained that there's millions of votes that is still to come to them, that was stolen from them. But I believe the EFF, if not there at 15%, should have been anywhere close to 20%, ladies and gentlemen. And for the EFF to accept the results just like that, I was very disappointed. So yeah, a lot happened. A lot of money flew around, especially to stop in the last quarter, in the first quarter of the year, or the last quarter of the year, depending on how you look at it. There in January, February, March, April, we started to see the Oppenheimer injecting more money, and this was to fight the MK political party in KwaZulu-Natal and everything like that. One thing that breaks my heart also even more is that Sinawo would say, no, it's not an excuse. This is how they saw the issue playing along. But how is that going to change? Have you guys ever asked yourself that? If we don't stop these millionaires will steal from our ground to fund political parties as they please, then it means the political parties like the EFF and maybe even the MK will never compete monetary with the Democratic Alliance and other political parties like IFP, Rise Mzansi, Bosa, and all of those things. They will never compete. So this excuse, even next year, will still be here. Even in 2029, this excuse will still be there. Guys, we are trying to do our best, but we don't have enough funding. That's why we find ourselves not being able to compete with these people. They are heavily funded by rich families, so that's why they are beating us. The model of funding that the IEC allows from donors must change. I know now they have changed it to, I think, 100,000. Anything above 100,000 must be disclosed on the books and all of that. Anything below that does not have to be disclosed and everything. And I'm like, Buffett, a parliamentarian gets paid 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million, depending on the committees that they are sitting in per year. When a political party receives 60 million, 60 million, that political party does not even need to go to parliament anymore. Those politicians can just focus on running politics every day because they are well funded. But lastly, I want to hear what Sinawo has to think about the MK political party. Is it a threat? Does it take it into consideration or anything like that? And this is exactly what Sinawo Tambo said.
The second one was, what do I think about the MKP? I don't have any high regard for it. I don't regard it highly at all. I never have. And I don't like talking about it, but I do when I'm asked.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's a progressive organization. Like, there's nothing that points to it. And it's become worse as months and weeks have proceeded. They keep on. I mean, I think the recent thing I saw from them is their almost praising of Donald Trump. I saw Jacob Zuma went to visit the King of Eswatini, said that he's one of the best leaders in Africa, runs one of the best societies in Africa. We know what's happening in Eswatini in terms of violation of human rights and democracy, the corruption by the king there. That is a progressive organization. Let's leave that. He says pregnant young girls must be sent to Robben Island without putting any blame on the young boys. We don't know what's going to happen to them.
Who was this?
Jacob Zuma, yeah. Pregnant young girls must all be sent to Robben Island for rehabilitation or whatever he was saying. Without any regard for the fact that a lot of teenage pregnancies occur out of sexual abuse. He says that. He says that we must reinstitute the power and control of monarchies over South African political society. Now, the Constitution of South Africa makes provisions for the role of monarchies, and the EFF appreciates the role of monarchies as well. In our society, as custodians of our history and bearers of our traditions, like, we appreciate kings, chiefs, and monarchs, but we're a constitutional democracy. Now, for political expediency, he wants us to return to a form of feudalism where, like, kings and chiefs run sort of enclaves in society, sort of Bantustans. The king of KwaZulu-Natal must have political control of KwaZulu-Natal. The king of Amatembu in the Eastern Cape must have control of the Abatembu tribe. So it's decentralizing our society, and it's going to base our existence in South Africa on tribal and chieftain, king and lines. We disagree with that. That's not progressive. That's taking us backwards. I mean, society developed from feudalism to capitalism, which we don't agree with, and ultimately, as Marxists, we believe it will progress to socialism and communism. So he's taking us backwards as an organization. I mean, there's a lot of things I can cite that I do not think the existence of this organization is beneficial to Black people. That is my perspective on them. But of course, they won a sizable chunk of the electoral vote in 2024.
Yeah.
And because simultaneously to these regressive positions that they hold, they simultaneously want to hold contradictory postures, such as being anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, such as being, they say they're class orientated. They don't necessarily say that, they don't say they're Marxist, but they say they're working class orientated or something of that nature in their constitution. So they exist with these two contradictions at the same time. So they're in parliament, they claim to support certain things that we support and will vote alongside with them where necessary, but I have very, very little regard for them.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, long gone are those days when the MK was still starting and you heard Cyril Ramaphosa, Julius Malema saying the MK and the EFF is the one thing. That love relationship that they had in the beginning. And long gone are those days. So you don't expect any leader from the EFF to come out in public and have any complimentary statements towards the MK political party. So it's not surprising that he says he has absolutely no high regard for that political party. He talks about the MK sort of like aligning with Trump, and also the president's statement during the campaigning that pregnant girls must go to Robben Island. I think also they must go there, study there, or something like that. That was a very careless statement. I've never heard him repeat it again, because I think that statement was very clumsy and careless for him, and insensitive to young girls in South Africa. So yeah, I think that statement, I don't agree with it, that the president, Jacob Zuma, said. Also the alignment with the Swati Kingdom. We know, I think one of his daughters is one of the wives there. So of course he's going to have high regards in terms of that alignment there. But what I would wish for the EFF is not to brush away the MK as a nothing political party. That's the mistake that the ANC did, and it landed them into a lot of problems. The MK might not necessarily be taking numbers away from the EFF. Honestly, when you look at the by-elections and everything, the MK might win, the ANC might win, the DA might win, but the numbers of the EFF are steady or slightly growing. If we were to be honest, when we are looking at the numbers, they are not losing numbers as per se. They might be losing wards, they might be losing whatever, but it's a good indication for them that the numbers are not falling down. But one thing you must never do is just to think MK is a family stokvel, nothing will happen there, whatever. These people who follow this party religiously so. And so you can't brush away. You must think of another strategy to beat them at their own game, and do whatever you need to do to get the votes and win wards and win everything. I actually want to go and do a breakdown of the by-elections so far in South Africa in 2025. I think there's more by-elections coming this week and the first week of April. So I might wait up until then, but I want to go to the IEC and find out, because I can't find all by-elections results in one platform. The IEC is very weak on social media, whether it's Facebook or whatever. You go on IEC pages, you don't find the information readily available. So I'm going to go to their office and I'm going to check if I can print everything there of all the by-elections that happened so far, so that we can look at the numbers and see why is it that the EFF is not performing well in regards of winning the elections of every ward that they are participating. Like they won in Free State, and they're doing well everywhere, but they're not winning. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that's something that the EFF should celebrate, and I don't think they do celebrate anyway. So that is the take that I gave you guys of Sinawo Tambo. I like the young man. And this is a quality politician that I wish all the best. I mean, we need this guy in the future. Cook these people properly. 10 years from now, we're going to have giants. We're going to have giants if they don't slip and change and say they were misled or something like that. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Until we meet again, don't forget to pray. But after you pray, stand up, African child. Do your best so that God can do the rest. Peace in Pan-Africanism. I salute you guys.